The World Cup has just produced something nobody expected to see this early. A player's tournament is over. Not because his team lost, not because of injury, not because of a failed drug test, because FIFA stepped in and removed him from the rest of the competition entirely. 5 matches. Done. Finished. And suddenly one question started spreading across football. What exactly did FIFA just punish? Because on the surface, this looks simple. Qatari player Asim Medivo went into a challenge against Canada's Ismael. It was late, it was ugly, and seconds later the entire atmosphere changed. Players immediately looked disturbed. Medical staff rushed in. The replay showed Cohn's leg twisting in a way that football fans instantly recognize. One of those moments where you stop looking at tactics, stop looking at the score, and just hope somebody can stand back up. Except he couldn't. The reports that followed made it worse, a double fracture, and suddenly the World Cup had its first major injury horror moment. Usually that's where the story ends. Dangerous tackle, red card, suspension, move on. But then FIFA announced the punishment, 5 matches, 5. And almost immediately people started asking a very uncomfortable question. Wait a second, was FIFA punishing the tackle, or were they punishing the result? Because once people started replaying the incident, the tackle itself did not look like one of those infamous football moments people remember for years. It wasn't a flying kick to the chest. It wasn't a violent stamp. It wasn't some obvious act of aggression where a player completely loses control. It looked clumsy, late, mistimed, bad. Yes, dangerous, absolutely, but intentional. That's where the argument started splitting apart, because football fans have seen challenges that looked much worse. They've seen players launch themselves with both feet. They've seen elbows thrown, studs driven into ankles. And somehow those moments sometimes ended with yellow cards, short suspensions, or barely any punishment at all. So people started asking a dangerous question. If Cohn doesn't break his leg there, what happens? Because that question changes everything. Suddenly, people went back to the actual match itself, and what they found raised even more eyebrows. The referee initially wasn't reaching for a straight red. He wasn't immediately reacting like he'd witnessed one of the worst challenges of the tournament. The first instinct was reportedly a yellow card, a yellow. Only after seeing the aftermath did the decision escalate, and now people were asking something even bigger. Did everyone react to the tackle, or did they react to the injury? Because those are two very different things. One judges the action, the other judges the outcome. And football has always struggled with that line. Then the situation got even stranger, because normally when a player suffers a brutal injury like this, emotions explode, fans attack the opponent, teammates get angry, people start demanding punishment. But then Ismael did something nobody expected. He posted a photo from the hospital, and standing there with him was Asim Medivo, the player responsible. They hugged. Reports said Medivo apologized. Reports said Cohn had no ill will, no public anger, no demand for revenge, no accusations of dirty play, and suddenly the victim himself seemed less angry than the football world around him. That created another problem. Because now people weren't just debating punishment anymore. They were debating fairness. Social media exploded with side-by-side clips, challenge after challenge, tournament incidents where players flew recklessly into tackles, challenges that looked almost identical, challenges that some fans argued looked even worse, except those players got yellow cards, or one-game suspensions, or nothing significant at all. Why? Because nobody got carried off. Nobody suffered a double fracture. And that accusation started spreading fast. FIFA isn't judging actions. FIFA is judging consequences. Now, to be fair, there is another side here. Serious injuries matter. Football isn't just about intention. Intent doesn't magically protect players from broken bones. A player can accidentally cause devastating damage, and governing bodies have responsibilities beyond individual incidents. They want deterrence. They want players thinking twice before diving into dangerous situations. That argument exists, and many people agree with it. But then another layer appeared, and this is where things became genuinely uncomfortable, because people started looking beyond the tackle itself. They started looking at who was being punished. Asim Medivo plays for Qatar. Qatar was already eliminated. Think about that for a second. A 5-match suspension sounds massive. It sounds severe. It sounds like FIFA dropping a hammer. But because Qatar is already out, the punishment effectively becomes permanent for this World Cup. Tournament over, case closed, and suddenly critics started asking whether FIFA had found the perfect example. A player already leaving anyway, a player without superstar status, a player without enormous commercial weight attached to his name, a player whose absence wouldn't affect ratings, headlines, or marquee matchups. Because football fans have long memories, and football fans remember moments where massive stars seemed to receive flexibility, moments where suspensions suddenly became complicated, moments where appeals succeeded, moments where important matches somehow still included important players, and whether those perceptions are fair or not almost doesn't matter anymore, because perception itself becomes reality. If enough people believe rules change depending on circumstances, trust starts disappearing. And once trust disappears, every future decision becomes suspicious. That's the danger here. Because now people aren't just questioning this punishment, they're questioning the process itself. How are these decisions made? Who decides 5 matches instead of 3? Where exactly is the line? How much does injury matter? How much does intent matter? How much does history matter? Because Medivo reportedly had no major reputation for dirty play, no long history of violent incidents, no record suggesting some repeat offender finally crossed the line. So where did 5 come from? Why not 2? Why not 3? Why not 1? That's where frustration starts growing. Not because people necessarily think he should avoid punishment, but because people want consistency. Consistency is the thing sports institutions depend on. Fans can accept harsh decisions. Fans can accept controversial decisions. What they struggle accepting are decisions that feel unpredictable, because unpredictability creates doubt, and doubt spreads fast, especially at the World Cup. Because this isn't some local league controversy disappearing after a weekend. This is the biggest tournament in football. Every decision gets replayed, every punishment gets analyzed, every inconsistency gets remembered. And now FIFA faces a problem that might be larger than one tackle. Because regardless of where people stand on Medivo himself, a question has already escaped into the wild, and once that question gets out, it's hard to put back. If 2 identical tackles happen tomorrow but only one player suffers a serious injury, do both players receive the same punishment, or do they receive different ones? Because if punishment depends on luck, football enters very dangerous territory. One player's missed time challenge becomes a yellow card. Another player's missed time challenge becomes a career-defining scandal. One player walks away, another becomes the face of a warning, and right now people aren't arguing over whether Asim Medivo deserved punishment. They're arguing over something much bigger. They're arguing over whether football's biggest governing body actually knows where the line is anymore. Because if nobody understands the rules, then eventually nobody trusts the rules. And when trust starts disappearing at the World Cup, the problem is no longer one tackle. The problem becomes the system itself.